I have been reading through George R.R. Martin's A Storm of Swords over the last month or so. It's been kind of slow going. I'm 50% of the way through, but I thought I would record a little in progress episode to just share my thoughts since it's kind of a long haul. So Storm of Swords is the third book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, which is also, it was adapted into a show called Game of Thrones, which I'm sure people are familiar with. It's such a wildly popular property or franchise. I thought I'd give a little bit of my history with the franchise and then talk a little bit more about A Storm of Swords so far. I came to the show first. It was the summer after high school, going into college, and I remember watching it. Maybe the first 2 seasons had been out. I remember watching it, being totally absorbed and engrossed in the show, really enjoying the show, and then I stuck with the show until it finished. I didn't necessarily always watch every season as it premiered. Sometimes I would wait until it finished airing and then I would watch it all over the course of like a day or two. But that was like a big part of the 2010s, was watching Game of Thrones, and I really enjoyed it. I made an attempt, and I had read the first book, A Game of Thrones, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I enjoyed it, but I just kind of fell off. It was a little daunting to think about reading 5 books of that length. But it was before the show had ended, so it was kind of like another way to tide me over between seasons. So watched the show, I liked the show. I think the whole vibe of the show kind of changed in the later seasons, and it went from being about this kind of parlor drama and these maneuverings of the different people and factions to be about kind of big set pieces, which, if that's what the creators want to do and they want to change it, that's fine, but it just kind of felt like a totally different show. And I watched it and was still excited about it, but it didn't have me feeling as satisfied in the last few seasons. But that's sort of done and gone. The ship has sailed. And yeah, since the show ended, I wanted to get back into reading the books and digging into the source material and just seeing how that goes. And this journey started about 1.5 years ago. No, actually 2 years ago. I listened to the audiobook of A Game of Thrones, which is narrated by Roy Dotrice, and loved it. I think his narration was great. He has a unique voice for every character, does an excellent job with it. Really like his style and his voice. I immediately followed that up with a Clash of Kings audiobook. Plowed through that. I think I just listened to A Clash of Kings. Really enjoyed that. I thought those 2 books are fantastic. Then I took a bit of a break, about 1 year probably, before starting A Storm of Swords, just because I don't know, felt like I needed a little break in space from that universe, and I was doing some other reading and my life was changing. So it just didn't happen. But started again with the audiobook, and I've actually been reading the print version and the digital version. So I'm listening to the audiobook, which syncs with the Kindle version, so I'm able to keep my progress and track there. And then sometimes I'll switch, I have the paperback, because I like holding the book, and that's just like a nice experience. And like looking at the book, feeling it, holding it. So yeah, I've been like cycling between all 3 of them, which is really helpful for such a long book. It keeps me engaged and interested, and I'll read on my Kindle while I'm in bed or traveling. Like recently, flying. It's just nice to have. And then I'll also read on my phone. So I kind of have these different ways that I'm reading and consuming the book, and generally enjoying it. I think I'm feeling really drawn to Arya's story arc in this book, and really curious where that goes, and more details around that. She's been the character I'm most engaged with, I'd say. And there's some cool things going on with Beric Dondarrion and the Hound right now that I'm just genuinely enjoying. So more thoughts. Let's get into A Storm of Swords then. So, like I said, I'm enjoying it. But because I know the major plot beats that happen in the show, I think I have less momentum and less excitement to read it as quickly as I think I otherwise would. If I didn't know what was going to happen, I would be so curious and really want to know what's around the corner, what's around the bend, what's in the next chapter. But since I generally know and generally remember, I feel a little less like there's an urgency to it. So the book has been this slow burn that has me envying people who read the books before seeing the television show, because I think that would be such a fun and enjoyable experience to go the way that the book is structured with the changing point of view characters. When you leave off with what's happening with Jon Snow or Daenerys, and you know it's going to be a few chapters before the next time you hear from them, but you want to know what happens, it propels you forward, and then that keeps happening with each point of view character, so you're just really interested to know what's going to happen. And I think George R. R. Martin does that really well. I've been reflecting a lot upon his writing and his writing style, and how that sits with the length of the book, because it's a long book. It's over 1,000 pages long, and I think it's longer than the first two books in the series. And in my head, when I think of a long book, I feel a little off-put because I'm worried it's going to kind of go and go into places, have long diatribes and ramblings about things that maybe aren't relevant to the core of what's happening. But I think George R. R. Martin is a really economical writer, and the point of view chapters really move quickly, and he doesn't mess around. He doesn't go and spend 20 pages on this one small little insignificant aspect of the world or the book or the character. Like, he keeps it moving forward at a brisk pace and is able to weave them together where it all supports one another, which I think is just massively impressive. So when I came to think about this and realize that the book is long, not because he goes off on these wild tangents that expand the scope of the book because he wants to talk about this one specific thing or whatever. It's just that he's trying to tell a story of such massive scale with so many different characters that he needs all that space, all those pages in order to do that. And that is, like, I respect that and I like that, because the chapters move so quickly that you're still propelled forward while there's still plot happening and there's still character development happening. And throughout all of it, you're getting a sense of the world and the locations and the history of it. So I think he does a really great job of it. And I don't know if he gets enough credit for that, at least from my perception of how people view his writing, is that he's a very lean writer and keeps things moving, which I really like and I really respect. But I could see then how, as the scope of it expands, how it could get very difficult to rein it in and focus. So if with each book, if the scope is getting wider and wider and there's more and more characters that are being covered as point of view, it makes sense then why one would arrive at a point where it takes longer and longer to write each book and it's more difficult and it's very challenging, probably, I would imagine, to focus, write, get it done, and keep it moving forward. So I feel a bit sympathetic to that, those difficulties. I can understand that. Roy Dotrice's narration in the audio version is still fantastic. So nothing there other than to say, if you like audiobooks, I recommend it. I think it's a great way to supplement the reading, or just go audio only like I did for the first two books. Something that I'm appreciating about the book having had watched the show, is that because he doesn't have a huge production budget and doesn't take dozens or hundreds of people to make the book, right, like it would a TV show, and it's not limited to a runtime of episodes and all of that, is that he has the space to still dive deep and go into more depth than the show can. I love that. I think that is a huge benefit to a book and to the medium and the art form, is that you get a much more deeper sense of what's happening, and there are more characters, but it's not so many that it's overwhelming or anything. At least I don't feel overwhelmed. But like, there are just events and smaller scenes that would get cut or were cut from the show that are in the books, and they don't feel like extra fluff, or that they don't feel unnecessary. They feel really important, and I'm so grateful for them. So that's been a real source of enjoyment, where if it was just one-to-one, but it's just a different medium, I think that might be a little challenging. But since there is more happening in the books and it goes into more depth than the show does, that's like been this huge boost of enjoyment. For example, Samuel Tarly's chapters, I have a much better sense of Sam and what the Night's Watch are up to when they're north of the Wall in this book than I did in the show. I think the show, when I reflect on that, season 3, that time of the book, it was more focused on Jon Snow and his happenings. But I like that Samwell is a point of view character. I think Sam is his chapters are readily great. Sam is very sympathetic and relatable and quite different than the rest of the cast of characters. So I find myself really enjoying Samuel Tarly's chapters and Arya Stark's chapters. They've been real highlights for me. I kind of like, even if I know what's kind of going to happen, I'm still like interested in the specific details about what's happening with Robb Stark and Catelyn, and kind of what's happening there. That's been kind of like, it's not slow, but sort of like they're like in River Run, and I think they've been in River Run the whole book, and there's sort of those things happening there. I'm loving Jaime and Brienne's chapters, and how that's been developing and changing is really, really wonderful and engaging and interesting. The way Jaime views and talks about Brienne is like, how that's even just subtly shifting within the first half of this book, I think is really great, and gives you more insight to Jaime's relationship with Cersei. So yeah, I'm overall really enjoying Storm of Swords. Excited to keep reading it. Gonna probably keep reading it as a slow burn to in between reading other books, like at night. I think it's great reading because the chapters are kind of shorter, and I have a really good sense of the world in my head from watching the show, which makes it, I have to do less mental lifting to read the books. Also, I like listening to the audiobook when I do chores and I'm around the house. So yeah, gonna keep on it. It'll probably be a slow burn. I'm definitely gonna read the next 2 books in the series and await for whatever is to come. But yeah, I think they're great, special books, and enjoying them. So getting a lot out of it in addition to having watched the show. So that's cool. I'd like to wrap up by just reading some of my favorite quotes from the book. Here's a quote from page 498. "Every man shall reap what he has sown, from the highest lord to the lowest gutter rat. They shone like frozen stars." Here's a quote about the Whites and the others north of the Wall. "The Whites had been slow, clumsy things, but the other was light as snow on the wind." And here's another quote. I think George R. R. Martin is really fantastic with descriptions. Sometimes he'll have a sentence or a turn of phrase that really impresses me and sticks with me, and I think his writing is consistently great. And the view of the world through each changing point of view character is unique and different, and his writing reflects that, even though it's all written in the third person. It's just like, yeah, he does a great job with managing that, at least in the first 2 books and the first half of this book. So, all right, last quote. He had never been a fleshy man, but now the bones moved beneath his skin like spears, fighting to cut free. Oh, one more actually. I loved this quote. It was the first sentence of an Arya chapter. The man on the roof was the first to die. Just a great opening first line. Those are my thoughts so far on the first half of A Storm of Swords. Gonna keep reading it. I certainly want to do a full review of it when I finish it, and then move on to the next 2 books. Overall, having a good time, enjoying the slow burn, and yeah, gonna just keep at it. All right, thank you.